So great question. The obstacles, obstacles are different for every entrepreneur and every business. I think about some of the classic examples. Really, there are three types of obstacles, or at least three, and the ones I'm thinking about track to the kind of the Venn diagram of innovation, which is viability, feasibility, and viability, feasibility, and desirability, but the most important one last, right? And when you look across desirability, which is, hey, does anybody want this? Viability, hey, can I make this an ongoing concern? Can I make this a long-term business? And that really ties into the last question we had. And then feasibility is like, hey, is this possible? Do the laws of physics prevent this from even being produced? When you think about those three things, you can start coming up with assumptions that you're making in each one of those areas as you're thinking about maybe a business idea. The best place to start is with the desirability, because if a customer doesn't care about an idea you have, then there really isn't much need to think about viability and feasibility. So you look across those. You look at something like Airbnb. Their initial risky assumption was stranger will come stay at a stranger's house. Pretty big assumption. I don't know if I would stay at some stranger's house for me. But what they did, they lived in San Francisco, and there were a lot of conventions there that brought in a lot of people, and the hotels were always booked. So they just put ads on Craigslist. They said, hey, we got an air bed for rent in an apartment with two single young men. And their first, as far as, again, don't beat me if I said it the wrong way, but their first guest was a young woman, a single young woman. And that was a big signal to them. It's like, hey, if a single young woman is willing to come stay with two single young men, that's a pretty good signal that there's a big demand out there for this. And that really propelled them that they were seeing this. So start with your assumptions. If you have an idea, start with the assumptions of desirability. What are we assuming people are interested in? What are we assuming people want? And then how do we test those? Because that's the next step. You have a risky assumption. You don't just let it sit there and say, well, I guess that's just going to stay risky. Now you test it, because you want the risk of your idea to get less and less and less as you go forward, not more and more and more. Because if you don't test your assumptions early on, they become bigger and bigger risks as you build something. So you want to build something with the baked in knowledge of, hey, this assumption is validated, this one was invalidated, but because of that, we know how we have to design our product as we move forward, and things are getting less risky. So that at the end, when you're just about done with your product, the things that you're doing are extremely low risk, and the market risk is extremely low because you've had the customer with you the whole way. So in this case here, it's come up with your idea, lay it out there, use the lean canvas or the business model canvas, just kind of lay it out, and then say, okay, if this was working, what would have to happen? Customers would have to be willing to do what? They'd have to be willing to do this. They'd have to be willing to go here. They'd have to be willing to believe this. They'd have to do it at this time of day. They'd have to stop using this product. All these types of things. That then gives you the canvas there, gives you your shopping list of things you have to learn. And that's the most fun. Going out and talking to people is amazing, because they tell you stuff that you would never have thought. And that's why you go out and talk to people, because you're not the customer, they are, and they're going to tell you something amazing.